Hello, and welcome to Revenge Diaries. If you're new here,
How could you
make
do
sure
this
to
to
like this
us?
video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a true story where justice finds its way back
You did
home.
that on
Today's
purpose.
story
I
was
hate
sent in
you.
by one of our viewers, and it's a powerful tale about dignity, disrespect, and quiet revenge. It's the story of a mother who was humiliated in her own son's house by the very woman he married. But what they didn't know is that she wasn't just a guest. She was the one who built the foundation they were standing on. Let's begin. My name is Lorraine. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived long enough to know when someone doesn't just dislike you, they want to erase you. It happened on a Sunday, a regular, soft Sunday. I baked banana walnut bread, the kind Daniel used to devour as a child when his cheeks were still round and his hands sticky with jam. My son invited me over for lunch, or maybe Amanda told him to. I can never be sure. She has a way of pulling his strings like he's not made of blood and bone but fabric. Still, I went. Because I'm his mother. Because I thought maybe I'd finally be welcomed like family again. I was wrong. The table was perfectly set. Too perfectly. Like a photo in a magazine no one really lives in. Amanda was pacing around in heels at home. Who wears heels in their own kitchen? Daniel sat at the head of the table, glued to his phone. My grandson, Milo, sat quietly, already buried in an iPad. I placed the warm banana bread on the counter and smiled at Amanda. I thought I'd bring something sweet. She looked at the tin like I had set down a bag of garbage. Oh, she said flatly, we're watching Carbs. Right now. I looked at Daniel. He didn't say anything, just kept scrolling. Amanda turned back toward the stove, muttering just loud enough for everyone to hear. Honestly, this is why we don't do these things often. I pretended I didn't hear, but Milo heard. His little eyes flicked up at me, unsure whether he should laugh or stay quiet. That alone broke my heart more than any insult. Lunch was mostly silence, forks scraping against porcelain. Amanda took a single bite of her chicken and pushed the plate away like it offended her. She reached for her water and glanced at me. You know, Lorraine, she said suddenly, maybe it's time you stop trying to act like you belong here. My hands froze over my fork. I'm sorry, she smirked. I mean, Daniel and I have our own routines now. You coming around all the time, it just messes things up. Daniel didn't stop her. He didn't even look at me, just took a sip of wine like the conversation wasn't about his mother being humiliated. I looked at Milo. He looked back, confused and worried. This wasn't a house where love was spoken freely anymore. And then it happened. The cup. Amanda stood, walked into the kitchen, and grabbed one of the crystal teacups from the rack, the ones I gifted them 5 Christmases ago. She held it up, like it meant nothing. You know what? She said coldly. You're not welcome here anymore. Then she threw the cup at the floor right next to me. It shattered. Not just the glass. Something inside me cracked too. Daniel finally looked up, not to defend me, not to yell at her, just to sigh, like I had caused all this by showing up. I stared at that shattered cup on the ground, then slowly turned to look at him. He looked away. That was it for me. No shouting, no crying. I simply picked up my purse, straightened my cardigan, and walked to the door. No words. No begging. No goodbye. Amanda stood with her arms crossed, proud. She didn't realize the woman she just dismissed had given her everything she flaunted. I walked back to my modest apartment that afternoon, feeling more powerful than broken. That was the difference now. I wasn't some fragile old woman who would crumble because a daughter-in-law threw porcelain and poison in the same breath. I was Lorraine J. Martin, the woman who co-signed the mortgage they were living under, the woman whose late husband left behind 2 fully owned properties, 3 income-generating businesses, and a family trust she still oversaw. One Amanda had no clue she was living off of. The handbags Amanda showed off on Instagram, paid for with dividends from my investments, the yoga retreats, the spa days, the designer wardrobe, all under the platinum card tied to the trust account. She didn't just disrespect me. She disrespected the hands that built her comfort. And now, I was going to close every door I'd once opened for her. The next morning, I called Tara, my lawyer and longtime friend. She answered on the first ring. Lorraine, I'm ready, I said. She didn't need to ask what that meant. We'd had this conversation in whispers before, when Amanda had made passive comments at holidays, when Daniel forgot my birthday, when I sat at the dinner table and felt like a stranger. But this time, I was done whispering. It was time to act. By 11:30 that morning, Tara had drafted the first of several legal notices. Amanda's access to the family trust account revoked. The secondary credit card tied to my name disabled. Their property trust agreement reopened for review. The private school tuition payment for Milo, which I had been covering quietly, paused pending reassessment. And then came the letter. One written by hand, one I signed personally, not out of revenge but clarity. Daniel, your silence told me everything. When a man watches someone disrespect his own mother and says nothing, he's made his choice. I will not argue. I will not return, but I will correct my mistake of giving too much to those who earn nothing. You were raised by a woman who built everything with her hands, and now I'm using those same hands to take it back. As I sealed the envelope, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Sometimes, the strongest thing a woman can do is walk out of a room that once depended on her presence to function and watch it fall apart in her absence. And Amanda? She was about to find out exactly what that felt like. 2 days passed after I mailed the letter. I didn't hear a word back, not from Daniel, not from Amanda, not even a cold, hollow apology. But I knew it was coming. Amanda had never lived a day without comfort. She didn't understand what struggle looked like, what sacrifice felt like. She'd never spent years making do, stretching every dollar to raise a son alone after my husband passed. No, Amanda thought money just existed, like water from a faucet, like comfort was her birthright. So when I closed the faucet, the silence began to shake their walls. That afternoon, I got a call. It wasn't from Daniel. It was from the private school where Milo studied. Mrs. Martin, the woman said gently, we're just following up. Milo's tuition hasn't been paid for next term. We tried contacting his parents, but we haven't heard back. I closed my eyes, letting the words hang there. That's because the account was never theirs to begin with. I politely thanked her and hung up. Then I sat still for a long moment, tea cooling in my hands. It wasn't Milo's fault. He was a good boy, sweet, quiet, caught in a house where love was a performance and control was the only real language spoken. But maybe, just maybe, this was the moment Daniel would remember why they were comfortable to begin with. Later that night, the calls began. First Daniel, then Daniel again, then Amanda from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. I let them sweat. And then, finally, a voicemail. Daniel's voice frazzled, thin, no longer the polished corporate tone he always wore around Amanda. Mom, I don't know what happened with the accounts. We can't use the cards anymore. Amanda says the bank is flagging everything. Can we talk? Please? Can we talk? Where was that tone when Amanda threw a cup at me? Where was this Daniel when his wife told me I didn't belong in the home I once helped furnish, repair, and sustain? He was silent. Now it was my turn. By the 4th day, I decided to reply, but only once. I sent a single text. When a woman is thrown out, she doesn't always come back. She rebuilds somewhere she's valued. No reply. No defense, just dots. That blinked and disappeared. Good. I didn't need more words. I needed actions. The next morning, Tara finalized the review on the property deed. It wasn't hard. Amanda and Daniel never formalized the transfer of title. Their home was still in my name, held in trust. That house they claimed on social media, the dream home they said they'd worked so hard for, was still mine. I had never enforced that truth before, but now it was time. Tara drafted a notice of intent, 30 days to vacate or negotiate purchase at market rate. Let's see if Amanda still thought she was queen of a castle. Once she realized she didn't even own the gate, it only took 5 hours. I was at the grocery store when my phone buzzed 3 times. Back to back, Daniel again. You're kicking us out. Are you serious, Mom? You can't do this to your own family. I stared at those messages and let them sit. He used the word family now. Interesting. Not when I sat at that table in silence. Not when Amanda shattered a cup beside my feet. Not when I walked out the door. But now that the comfort was slipping, now I was Mom again. No. I wasn't going to be manipulated by guilt dressed up as sentiment. I walked home slowly, thinking about everything I'd done over the years to give them ease. The emergency money for their down payment. The family trust Amanda used for shopping and never once said thank you for. The Christmas bonuses I quietly handed Daniel when he got laid off and didn't want Amanda to know. I had been their silent safety net for too long. They never thought I'd cut the rope. But here I was with scissors in hand. By day 7, the ripple had turned into a tidal wave. My neighbor, Doris, knocked on my door with a worried look. Lorraine, I just saw Amanda in the bank shouting at someone in the parking lot, red-faced and all. I think she's cracking. I smiled. Let her. Doris blinked, surprised at my calm. You all right, dear? I'm better than I've been in years, I said truthfully, and I meant it, because the truth was I didn't want to destroy anyone. I just wanted them to understand that I wasn't disposable. I was essential. They just forgot that. Now they were remembering. That night, I lit a single candle by the windowsill and made myself something warm to eat. No fancy appliances. No marble counters or chandeliers. Just peace. And in that quiet, I realized something even deeper. This wasn't just about Amanda. It wasn't just about Daniel either. This was about me, finding my voice again, claiming my place again, owning the power I'd slowly handed away in the name of keeping peace. Well, peace built on silence isn't peace. It's quiet oppression, and I had no room left for it in my life. By the time Amanda finally showed up at my apartment red-eyed, shaking, wearing sunglasses even at dusk, it was too late. She stood at my door like a stranger. Lorraine, she said, can we talk? I didn't open the screen. I simply replied, Amanda, did you forget what you said to me? Because I didn't. Her lips parted, but no apology came, just excuses, and that told me everything. I stepped back. Come back when you remember the difference between inheritance and entitlement, and I closed the door. Quietly. No slam. No dramatics. Just finality. 3 days passed after Amanda appeared at my door. 3 full days of silence. Not a call, not a knock, not even a message from Daniel. And yet, I knew things were moving behind the scenes. That's the thing about pulling the rug out from beneath people who never saw you coming. It doesn't just trip them up. It makes them scramble. Tara called me early that morning. Lorraine, just keeping you in the loop. Daniel tried to call the trust office this morning. He's trying to access the emergency fund, but everything's locked down, just like you asked. I nodded, stirring my tea. Let it stay that way. They're panicking, Lorraine. I'm done rescuing people who shove me away the second they feel secure. Tara didn't argue. She understood. Later that afternoon, while I was tending to my garden, the one place where things grew without demands, complaints, or comparisons, I saw Daniel's car pull up near the curb. He didn't come up right away. He sat there, engine off, staring at the front door like it might open on its own. I kept trimming the lavender bushes. Eventually, he stepped out. Gone was the confident, polished version of him, the tailored blazer, the firm handshake, the empty charm. He looked tired, unshaven, his eyes sunken with worry, as if he'd aged a decade in a week. Mom, he said cautiously. I looked up, still kneeling by my flower bed. Daniel, I came to apologize. Is that so? Yes. He swallowed. I should have stopped her. I should have said something when Amanda threw that cup. It wasn't right. None of it was. I just froze. I stood slowly, wiping my gloved hands on a cloth, and when she told me I didn't belong in your house, when she called me a burden and threw something I gifted you with love, you froze then too? He looked at the ground. Yes. A silence settled between us. A heavy one, not angry, but honest. And why now, Daniel? Why come here now? His voice was small. Because we're losing the house. There it was. Not because I hurt you. Not because I realized what Amanda did. But because we're losing the house. I nodded slowly. So, this visit isn't love. It's survival. He winced. Mom, it's not like that. It is, I said firmly. And that's what breaks my heart. I invited him inside. Not because I forgave him, but because I needed him to hear the full weight of what I'd carried and what I would no longer hold for him. He sat on the worn couch he used to nap on after soccer practice as a teenager. He looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. Do you remember, Daniel? I asked gently, when Amanda had that emergency surgery 2 years ago and couldn't work for 6 weeks? He nodded. And do you remember who paid your rent that entire time? His voice cracked. You did. And when Milo was born, who stocked your entire nursery? Who paid for the hospital parking, brought food every day, and made sure Amanda's mother had a hotel room? You did. I sat across from him. I have never wanted thanks, Daniel. I never kept score. But Amanda, she used all that love as leverage. And you let her. He wiped his face. I didn't know how to stand up to her, he whispered. I didn't raise you to be a man who looks away when someone's hurting the people who made him, I replied. Amanda may be your wife, but I am your mother. And not once did I disrespect her, but she made it a sport to disrespect me. Daniel nodded, shame plain on his face. I don't know how we got here. You got comfortable, Daniel. You confused generosity for obligation. And now that the benefits are gone, you realize who gave you the life you bragged about. He looked at me then, really looked at me like a man finally seeing his mother as a whole person and not just a background presence. I don't expect you to fix everything, Mom, he said quietly. I want to make it right. You can't make it right with one visit, I said, but you can start. He blinked. How? I handed him an envelope, not a legal one, but handwritten. Inside is a list of everything Amanda used from the family account. All the purchases I covered, all the support given. I'm not asking for repayment, but I am asking you to face what you've taken for granted. He took it with trembling hands. And the house? He asked. I won't throw Milo out on the street, I said, but you will leave. Amanda too. He looked up, stunned. You're separating us? I'm giving you both a choice, I said calmly. If you want to keep living together, do it somewhere else. That house is going to be sold and the profits will go into Milo's education fund. Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand. I won't argue. I won't yell. I've done enough of that in my heart, but I will no longer fund a life that erases me. He nodded, lips pressed into a hard line. And Amanda? He asked softly. She's no longer my concern. He left a few minutes later, envelope clutched in his hands like a mirror he couldn't yet look into. I closed the door, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a background character in my own life. I felt central, rooted, awake. Not everything is forgiven, but everything is changed. That night, I baked again, banana walnut bread, just like before. Same old recipe, same oven mitts I'd owned for decades. The smell filled my apartment, warm, comforting, familiar. But this time, it didn't smell like sacrifice. It smelled like strength, like choice, like reclaiming the parts of myself I had buried to keep peace with people who saw my kindness as weakness. At Grandparents' Day, Milo ran across the schoolyard and wrapped his arms around me before I could even set down the cake tin. Grandma, he grinned. You came. I told you I would. He looked up at me with eyes so full of trust that I almost forgot what his mother had said. Almost. You know, he whispered, Mom and Dad are fighting a lot. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he shrugged. I don't like it when they yell. I like it better when you're there. I smiled, brushing the hair from his forehead. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to be kind, but I'm here now. And I meant every word. It had been 2 weeks since Amanda stormed out of my apartment and nearly 3 since I handed Daniel the list. And now, the move-out notice was live. Their house, my house, was up for sale. It was strange to see the photos posted online. The living room I once helped paint, the kitchen I once remodeled so Amanda could feel like a modern chef, the backyard where Daniel used to set up a tiny inflatable pool for Milo. But there was no nostalgia in me now, only clarity. That place had never been mine in spirit, just in paperwork. Amanda and Daniel turned it into something transactional, a gift used against me, a house where my presence became unwelcome the moment I stopped being useful. And now, they were learning that even silent people have limits. On a quiet Thursday, just after lunch, there was a knock on my door. This time, it wasn't Amanda or Daniel. It was Milo. He stood there, backpack slung over one shoulder, holding a wrinkled paper in one hand and a hopeful expression in the other. Mom dropped me off, he said. She said you might say no. I never say no to you. I smiled gently, stepping aside. Come in. He wandered into my apartment like he always did, headed straight for the cookie tin he knew I kept above the fridge. I handed it to him, without asking, and he grinned like he used to before things got complicated. Grandma, do we have to move? He asked between bites. The question caught me, not because I didn't expect it, but because it wasn't said with panic. It was said with genuine curiosity, like he was trying to understand the rules of the grown-up world around him. I think so, sweetheart, I said, but that's a decision for your mom and dad to make. Dad's sad a lot now. I nodded. Sometimes people don't realize how lucky they are until things change. He frowned. Did I do something wrong? That broke me a little. I leaned down, looked him straight in the eyes. No, Milo, you did nothing wrong. The grown-ups around you made choices, and now they're learning that choices come with consequences. He looked at the crumpled paper he'd brought. I drew this in class today. It's us. He unfolded it, a messy, sweet crayon drawing of a house with 3 stick figures, me, Milo, and a dog we'd once seen at the shelter and talked about adopting. I hung it on the fridge without hesitation. You're always welcome here, I told him. That evening, I got a message from Daniel. Not a call this time, just a text. I moved out. Amanda's staying with her mother. I didn't want Milo to keep hearing us fight. I'm sorry, Mom. No demands, no begging, just resignation. For the first time, I felt something shift in him. He wasn't trying to win. He wasn't trying to reverse time. He was finally accepting reality and maybe even taking responsibility. I didn't respond right away. I needed to sit with that. To feel whether his sorrow came from understanding or just losing. A week later, I received an envelope from the bank. Inside was a formal withdrawal request. Amanda had tried, once again, to access funds from the family trust under the pretense of house-related emergencies. Tara had flagged it. I called the bank and asked for it to be denied, not because I was being petty, but because Amanda still hadn't apologized, still hadn't even acknowledged what she'd done. And people like that, they don't learn when you keep bailing them out. They learn when they have to face the consequences without shortcuts. On Sunday morning, I was sitting at the park bench where I used to take Daniel as a boy when I saw her again. Amanda. She wasn't in heels this time. She wasn't wearing designer sunglasses or carrying a bag that cost more than a used car. She was pushing a tired stroller and wearing clothes. I'd never seen her in plain, wrinkled reel. She didn't notice me at first. Her eyes were on her phone, her pace quick and nervous. She looked like a woman who hadn't slept. A woman who'd spent her life perfecting an image only to watch it crack, slowly, publicly, painfully. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. That's when I knew I had truly healed. When seeing her didn't ignite rage but didn't spark pity either, just stillness. She looked up, saw me, froze mid-step. I nodded once. She didn't wave. She turned around and walked away. That was enough. That afternoon, I sat with Milo in the living room. We were working on a puzzle together, a big one, full of sky and sea. He concentrated hard, brow furrowed, tongue poking out of the corner of his mouth. Grandma? Yes, love. When I grow up, can I have a house like yours? I smiled. You can have a house even better. How? By remembering the people who helped you get there. By being kind. And by never making someone feel small just because you feel big. He nodded slowly, digesting every word. I kissed the top of his head. We didn't finish the puzzle that day, but we'd started rebuilding something much more important. The day the house officially went up for auction, the skies were gray and heavy as if the weather, too, had something to grieve. I hadn't gone near the property since Amanda screamed at me that day. I hadn't even driven by. But today, I needed to see it one last time, not to hold on, but to let go fully. The auctioneer's truck was already parked out front when I arrived. A few neighbors stood across the street, whispering. The new reality was setting in for all of them. The picture-perfect couple next door wasn't as untouchable as they seemed. Daniel stood near the porch, arms folded tightly across his chest. He saw me from the corner of his eye but didn't approach. Instead, he watched as a man in a tailored suit, likely a buyer, took a clipboard and started walking the perimeter. Amanda was nowhere to be seen. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped out of my car. Every step toward that house felt like a memory unraveling. The smell of paint on the walls when we finished the remodel. The garden hose Milo once used to soak my shoes and giggle like a little imp. The doorbell I'd paid for because Amanda wanted one with a camera. So much of me was in this house, but none of it had been respected. Lorraine, Daniel said, cautiously approaching. You didn't have to come. Yes, I replied. I did. I looked him over. His beard had been trimmed, his eyes less hollow than before, but there was still something tentative in his posture, like a man unsure if he still deserved to stand in my presence. I came to say goodbye, I said. To the house? To the version of my family that lived here, I replied gently. He looked down. I never knew how deep it went until you walked out, Mom, he said. I thought you'd always just be there. I said. Even when I shouldn't have been. He swallowed. I deserve what's happening. I don't want punishment, Daniel. I want growth. I want you to be better for Milo than you were for me. He nodded slowly. And Amanda? I asked. He hesitated. She left town, took Milo for the weekend so he wouldn't see the sign in the front yard. She's still trying to manage appearances. She doesn't know how to handle consequences. Then maybe it's time she learns, I said, calm and steady. As the auctioneer began the formal process, I stood off to the side, watching the bidders murmur and take notes. The house was well kept, structurally sound, and in a high-demand neighborhood. It would sell fast. And it did. Within 25 minutes it was gone just like that. The home Daniel thought was his forever was now legally in someone else's name. All the marble countertops and curated furniture couldn't keep it from slipping away. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt complete. Later that day, I met Daniel again. He'd asked to talk somewhere quiet. So we met at a small park not far from the city library. He brought Milo along. I didn't know if I should come, Daniel admitted. I'm glad you did. Milo ran to the swing set while we sat on a bench nearby. I've found a rental, Daniel said. Small, nothing like the house. But it'll work. You'll manage, I said. You always had the ability. You just didn't use it because you never had to. He didn't argue. Mom, he continued, you've always been stronger than I gave you credit for. I looked at him. I didn't want to be strong, Daniel. I wanted to be loved. His eyes brimmed with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered, for not standing up, for choosing silence. I forgive you, I said softly, but that doesn't mean we go back. It means we go forward differently. He nodded. I understand. Milo came running back and plopped onto the bench beside me. Dad says we might get a dog. He chirped. You'll be a great dog, brother. I smiled, and he says I can still see you every week. You can see me anytime you want, sweetheart. My door's always open for you. That night, as I sat in my cozy apartment, tea in hand and soft music playing, I realized something vital. The house didn't define my worth, the money never bought me respect, and silence never protected me. From pain, it only delayed the healing. Amanda had tried to break me with her temper. Daniel had tried to ignore me with his guilt. But I hadn't shattered. I'd risen, not loudly, not with vengeance, but with quiet resolve. Because some power doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what you no longer accept. And I had finally, completely, stopped accepting less than I deserved. 3 months had passed. The house was sold. The trust accounts were closed. And Amanda's name had long disappeared from any legal paperwork tied to my name. I hadn't heard from her once. Not an apology. Not a call. Not a letter. But I didn't need one anymore. Her silence no longer stung. It told me everything I needed to know. Apologies weren't in her vocabulary, not real ones at least. What she wanted was access, not amends, and I'd taken back the access. She no longer had a key to my peace. Daniel had kept his word. He moved into a modest but clean 2-bedroom apartment and even picked up a second job to keep up with expenses. Milo stayed with him most days, sometimes with Amanda too, though she rarely brought him by anymore. Daniel was working to rebuild what had been damaged. And I saw it in the little things. The way he thanked me without prompting. How he took over making dinner when Milo stayed over at my place. How he no longer looked at me like a tired obligation, but like someone he wanted to learn from again. That change didn't erase the past, but it made the present easier to hold. One Sunday morning, Milo sat at the dining table, flipping through an old family photo album I hadn't touched in years. Grandma, who's this? He asked, pointing to a photo of my younger self standing next to my late husband, Richard. That's me, I said, smiling. A long time ago. He looked surprised. You look cool, I laughed. I used to be. You still are, he said, matter-of-factly. You're like a secret boss. I chuckled softly, leaning over to tousle his hair. I'll take that as a compliment. He turned the page again, and there it was, a picture of a much younger Daniel, missing 2 front teeth with chocolate smeared across his face. Dad looks happy, Milo said. Was he always like that? I paused. He was. Once, I said, before life got loud. Is he happy now? I looked at him carefully. He's trying, I said, and trying is a very good start. That afternoon, as I walked Milo to the elevator to meet his father downstairs, we passed a woman in the hallway, tall, worn, dragging a suitcase behind her. Amanda. She stopped when she saw me, but this time, there were no sharp words, no sarcasm, just a quiet, hollow expression. Lorraine, she said. I nodded politely. She looked thinner, paler, like someone who had spent the last few months walking in circles inside her own pride. Can we talk? I hesitated for a long moment. Then, gesturing toward the small community bench near the mailboxes, I said, 5 minutes. She sat like a person who hadn't rested in days. I know I haven't earned your time, she started. You're right, I replied. She glanced at me, then lowered her eyes. But I wanted to say it anyway, she continued. I was cruel. I thought I was above you. I thought your kindness made you weak. But you're the strongest person I've ever met. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch long. You took away everything I leaned on, she whispered. And I still don't know who I am without it. You were never supposed to lean on me, Amanda, I said calmly. You were supposed to walk beside me, not on me. Tears welled in her eyes. I know it's too late. It's never too late to change, I replied. But it's too late for me to be your cushion. She looked down. Do you think Milo will hate me one day? I think Milo is smart enough to see people for who they are, I said. The question is, who do you want him to see when he looks at you? Amanda nodded slowly, stood up, and walked away without asking for anything. And that, finally, was something real. Weeks passed. I started attending book club again, hosted a garden brunch for my neighbors, picked up painting, something I'd abandoned years ago when caregiving consumed my time. People said I looked lighter, and I felt it, not because I had won, but because I'd stopped handing over my peace to people who hadn't earned it. On a crisp spring morning, Daniel knocked on my door, Milo by his side, holding something behind his back. What's this? I asked, smiling. Milo grinned. Surprise. He pulled out a handmade card, folded unevenly, with glitter glued along the edges. Inside was a sketch of our living room, me on the couch, Daniel holding a plate, and Milo in between, smiling. We made dinner, Daniel said. Thought we could bring it up and eat here, like old times, but better. I stepped aside and let them in. Dinner was simple. Chicken casserole, some store-bought bread rolls, and iced tea. But it was the conversation that made it. Rich stories from Milo's school, Daniel's new manager who was finally not a jerk, and memories of Richard that made us laugh instead of cry. When dinner ended, Daniel stayed behind as Milo went to rinse his plate. Mom, he said quietly, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me, even when I deserved it. I reached across the table, placed my hand over his. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for me. I just hoped you'd catch up. He smiled. I'm trying. I know. That night, as the apartment quieted again, I sat on the couch, sipping the last of the tea. Amanda had tried to erase me not just from the room, but from the life I helped build. But what she never understood was this. You can't erase the roots of something you didn't plant. And this time, I wasn't just the roots. I was the tree, standing tall, and shaken, and finally, completely, at peace.